And welcome all of you. Good to see you. More than 1,000 people known to be dead. It's feared that final death toll could rise to many more. And many are injured. Nature's power to destroy is truly awesome. But if you believe that God created this earth and that his will rules, it's hard to make sense of such a disaster. Should an earthquake shake your faith? Deen, Muslim philosopher, was this then God's greater purpose, part of God's greater purpose?
First and foremost, my sympathies go to those that are struggling right now because of this disaster. But although this is an emotionally challenging question, it does not, however, give us reasons to doubt that God exists. What we can say for sure, that there are morally sufficient reasons to allow this disaster to happen.
He allowed it to happen.
That he allowed it to happen. I think it's too strong of a word to say that he willed it to happen, that he directly caused the tsunami. We have to understand that the natural world is a world that is contingent and has natural laws. And a consequence of that can be, for example, storms and earthquakes. But we can be sure to say that there are morally sufficient reasons to allow this disaster to happen, this suffering to happen, and that in the afterlife, God will infinitely compensate their suffering.
So he knew it was going to happen,
yes,
and there's a reason for it.
There is a morally sufficient reason at the end of the suffering to justify that suffering in the first place, to allow it to happen.
No, I don't agree with that at all.
Whose suffering are we talking about here?
The people that are in the disaster.
So not like the rest of the world watching it then?
Oh, no, of course. Of course, our responsibility, of course, we're suffering by looking at these disasters. But our test in this life, in response to those suffering, is to act and do good in the name of justice and compassion. So we are also being tested in this moment, so also, not just the individual.
It's a test for all of us.
It's a test for all of us.
If you believe that we're all being tested, that God has just decided that he is going to let all of this happen to test our faith in him or our faith in religion.
The world is a contingent existence. It is a natural world that has aspects of it which involve earthquakes, etc.
And by the sound of it, you're trying to say that God is destroying that to make us...
No, God is not destroying us through tsunamis.
Well then,
God created the world that is contingent and is material.
Well, if it was God's will to create this tsunami, okay, and all this suffering, you know, there's going to be a reason for it.
In order for this to be a...
Okay, Tilly, I'll just tell him, Tilly's here for another debate, and that will all become apparent when we have that second debate. But let me just ask you, Stuart Ritchie, do you think this people of religion, whether they be Muslims, whether they be Christians or Jewish or whatever, should this shake their faith?
Absolutely. Religion is about the only place where we suspend our critical faculties in this way. In any other sphere of life, if you were sitting in your office and your boss came along with a massive demolition bomb and wrecked half the office and killed half of the employees there, you wouldn't think, maybe he's got a plan, maybe it's his purpose, maybe he's doing this to improve the business or something.
Isn't that a simplistic view of what religious people believe? Isn't that a kindergarten view of what people believe? Aren't you?
It's a kindergarten-style belief that there's a being who had the power to create a universe with no evil in it, and yet did so for some reason that we don't really know. That's a very poor philosophy.
Let me come to you, if I can, the Reverend Edward Colquhoun, Grand Chaplain of the Grand Orange Lodge. We were chatting earlier on, and you said, yes, you believe this is a God-created universe and a God-created world.
Indeed.
And there were clear geological fault lines here, and you said it was mankind or humankind's choice to build houses in a dangerous place. Just expand on that.
Yes, I mean, I'd like to know what the moral sufficiency is to suggest that a caring and loving creator, God, would inflict on their people such a terrible disaster. I fail to see how that is relevant at all. I believe.
But on the point that you were making about we choose.
Sure.
What do you mean? Where to build houses?
Well, my point is, this is a natural phenomenon that happened within a created order. It seems to me that this tragedy that we've witnessed in the last few days has happened in an area that's been overdeveloped and is built on a natural fault line. Now, forgive me, please, if mankind were not built there, then this would not have been an issue this morning. It's not God...
Sorry,
Juliet.
I think it's one thing that that worries me when there's a natural disaster like this is people who are survivors or the family of survivors. They say things like, our prayers have been answered because our relative and our loved one survived. But that's incredibly arrogant when the people next door's relative and loved one didn't survive. Was God not looking out for them? I'm from the Humanist Society, and Humanist celebrants do funerals for people who die in the most tragic of circumstances. And most people nowadays, they lose their faith when they are close to suffering because they can't equate it with a loving God.
In Haiti, there was a huge revitalisation of faith.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Bishop David.
It's not my experience as a pastor that people lose their faith when they're close to suffering. I've spent a great deal of time with people in illness, which, as you experience it, appears to be a random thing. Why do I have cancer and not the next person? Mm-hmm. What I've actually found is that it opens up depths of response and compassion in people, which are very moving. This too is a moment for compassion. It's the randomness of it that is so offensive and difficult.
But it's the randomness of it that's so worrying when you bring God into the equation. It would make sense if God was just, if these natural disasters, excuse me, let me finish. Yeah. It would make sense if these natural disasters just killed sinners or even non-believers. But it seems to be such a sort of random selection of people who are suffering.
I think the chaplain made a very interesting point. The distinction between a natural disaster, which is part of the way in which the world is made, not perfect, and the way in which choices which people make affect the consequences. For example, this morning I was listening to people saying that in choosing where these nuclear power stations had been built, people had disregarded ancient Shinto understanding of how to live with fault lines, for example. So there are consequences to actions, even though the world seems random in that sense.
In a second.
The real point here is, most religious people in this room, I would imagine, believe that God sometimes intervenes in a miraculous way to actually suspend those natural laws and actually come in and do something about it. You can ask him to do it by prayer, whatever. Yeah. But the question is here, why has he not done it in this case?
Ruth Gledhill,
were all these people sinners?
Ruth Gledhill, did God know this was going to happen?
I don't think that God comes into it in the way that is being suggested so far.
Can I put something to you? And I think it's quite an interesting point, this. It might not be, but you never know, it may be. I know people look at the fascinating programme by Brian Cox about the wonders of the solar system, about that, and I've heard Christians saying, well, that's God's work and that's God's creation, those stars exploding, it's beautiful. When a baby is born, look at the beauty of that, how can you not see God in that? So there is a tendency for religious people to cherry-pick the good things and not the bad things as well. So God is only responsible for the good and not the bad. How do you explain that?
Intelligent design and the argument of intelligent design does not explain the problem of suffering, which is a problem that's bedeviled really all faith systems since faith systems began. And I don't have the answer to why suffering happens. But what I do know is that I see God's work in the response of the people to that suffering. I see God's work even in the atheist Johann Hari saying to people, when at the top of the Twitter trending topics was pray for Japan, he was saying pay, don't pray. And, you know, people need to put that into action, not just praying, but actually giving time and money and effort.
So after disasters like this, that's when we see God?
I think that we see God in what people do. And basically, it's a Christian humanist approach.
Nicky, can I just...
Yes, you're from the Centre for Intelligent Design.
Yes, now, intelligent design hasn't got a view on earthquakes. Intelligent design is not a theological construct. I'm a Christian, and I just want to make a different point, which is that my Christian faith has different foundations, a range of foundations. I'm a Christian believer. I believe that God exists for historical reasons, for philosophical reasons, for scientific reasons. These, to me, are fixed points. Now, it would be very strange on a day like this not to be challenged by the catastrophe in Japan.
Are you challenged?
I am challenged. I'm not shaken, but I am challenged.
Is your theory of intelligent design challenged? Because if this was a piece of building work, this sounds to me like a cowboy builder.
No, and as I said to you, intelligent design is not a theological construct. It is about an interpretation of scientific data. I happen to think that intelligent design lends credence to Christian belief, but it doesn't compel it. I'm making a different point.
Why was this part of the world designed so badly, geologically speaking?
Let me just make a different point. My Christian faith has a range of foundations, and within that I have to live with the mystery and challenge of what seems to me to be inexplicable. But Christians shouldn't, in any sense, be strangers to suffering. After all, our Lord was crucified an innocent man. And it is a fact, as you have pointed out, that where the church suffers, faith increases. So we understand that we need to hold suffering within our faith system.
Juliet.
I don't think faith is increasing. Just to come back to what the lady said there about God's work is in the actions of people helping, disaster victims. When there was the situation with the Chilean miners, I don't think anybody around the world could be failed to be absolutely moved by their story and what happened as a consequence of that when they were saved. And to say that the science, the technology, the human ingenuity that caused their rescue and enabled them to live their lives was because God allowed those men to do that for them, that's all very nice. But what about the earthquake that happened, a few hundred miles away and they all died? Was God just not paying attention that day?
I think it's important to state this here, that people are talking about this in the sense that it is happening in a vacuum and that these things are random. But that's begging the question. How do you know it's random? Maybe this is part of God's plan in order to bring out morally sufficient reasons. How do you know? That's begging the question.
But maybe
you're
right, and it is part of God's plan, but why worship that God?
Let me just finish.
Adam, quickly, then Hardy has something to say.
As finite beings and finite cognitive faculties, we don't have the foresight to know that what will happen, which is seen as being evil or bad now, that in the long run will be good. We have this problem. We have this problem in ethical principles, like, for example, utilitarianism. A genuine problem with this.
It surpasseth our understanding.
Yeah,
there's Hardy Coley.
Adam, you make a compelling argument for anyone to buy into Marx's notion that religion is the opiate of the people. What you...
How is that?
And much as I believe everyone should be reading more Marx these days, what you said earlier is that those who've tragically died in Japan, will be looked after in the afterlife, opiate of the people. This has got nothing to do with God. Okay, bizarrely, the less we inculcate God into what happens in our daily lives, the more we will allow to be able to have a relationship, if we choose to, with God or not. I think to somehow suggest that God is the puppet master is fundamentally flawed, because there isn't a single religion, bless you all, and I mean that, there isn't a single philosophy, there isn't a single way of thinking that can explain the absolute contradiction. Let's widen this out, Nicky, for a moment. Forget the earthquake for a second. We talk about...
Where is the contradiction,
Hold on just a second,
Where's the
Adam.
contradiction?
Hold on just a second, I was semicolon. The earthquake's one thing, building on fault lines is one thing. That's unfortunate, and it was wrong to overpopulate Japan. It's also unfortunate to have been born in sub-Saharan Africa during a famine. Do you know what I mean? How do we explain that? When I was educated, that's what I had to get my head around. None of it makes sense. Let's not look for sense in it. And Ruth's absolutely right. If God exists, it exists in every human being, and it's our reaction to these things that ought to remind us of some spirituality.
Let's go to the audience, and then, Professor, I know you have something to say. You had your hand up. Good morning.
Good morning.
Quick point.
Yeah. As a creature, we did not have any power coming in this world. When we came in this world, we just nourished and we grew up, and we need some guidance to live in this life. So God was really merciful, descending many prophets to guide the human being how to live in this life.
What about the earthquake?
The earthquake is, according to the word, is leading towards an end, and the word is.
So it's the beginning of the end.
It's start of the end.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes, sir.
This earthquake has restored my faith in humanity. The reaction we have as human beings to natural catastrophes restores my faith in humanity, and that's what I believe in, that mankind is all-powerful. They can do an enormous amount of...
I'm going to go over here. Good morning.
Morning. There's been reference here to Haiti and the fact that the disasters there have increased faith. We need to, if we use Haiti as an example, we need to look more at the context that we're talking about. There's a people that have been exploited for years, that have puppet governments that have been imposed by the US, or that have had governments that have murdered and tortured the people of Haiti. That's one of the poorest countries in the world. I mean, surely that is a factor there. If they had been living in the lap of luxury, if they had had something else to lean on other than the crutch of religion... Sorry, can I finish, please? You allowed your opportunity. If they'd had the opportunity to have something else to lean on, if they'd have had money to build themselves secure houses in better parts of the island, would that have been
I just wanted to say that again. I wasn't aware of having said any of that, and I think the danger here is to think you know the answers to this. I don't know the answer to this, but what I was trying to say is that Christians know how to hold the tension between inexplicable things and things that are clearly believable.
Fewer and fewer things are inexplicable with the march of science, aren't they?
I beg your pardon?
Aren't fewer and fewer things inexplicable?
No, I'm listening to...
Over the last few hundred years because of the march of science
it is the
and
reason.
reason.
I'm listening to points of view that seem to have great certainty.
It is the atheist that says, I have the answer.
Yes,
there is evil and suffering, therefore God does not exist.
That's right. And
but the onus is on the atheist or the skeptic to argue that there are no morally sufficient reasons to allow this to happen.
Adam, you've got it wrong.
No, sorry, if I may finish.
You
spoke about opium. You spoke about opium earlier. You spoke about opium earlier. What's an opium? It's to believe that good and evil exist without God. That's an opium. Without God, there is no evil, there is no good whatsoever. That is the biggest opium.
There's two interpretations here. We can have interpretation one, where there's a universe which has come about through natural laws and all the things that are come along with that, like earthquakes because of plate tectonics and so on. Or we have a world which was created by a God who knew about it right from the start, who knew everything that was going to happen, who is also 100% good, and let that happen. Now, it's not up to us to say there's definitely not a God. We're simply looking at these two options and seeing which is the most plausible.
And the plausible one, we have to suspend our judgment to do with things that we see as good and evil.
The plausible one is not the one where we have to say, well, yes, I do believe in God, but, oh, well, he must have had a reason for that. I don't know what it is, but he must have had a reason for that.
I think we're confusing the matter here.
That's called special pleading.
I'm not arguing.
Let's go to people back here, because lots of people want to say on this. Good morning. Your hand just shut up. Yeah.
I struggle to actually understand. There was a mention.
Don't we all?
As I mentioned about we're going to test. It's been continuous test in this life. When is humans going to get the opportunity to actually live a quality life as humans? Because it's non-stop test.
Professor Tom Devine, remember when we had Hurricane Katrina and there was a long list, Pat Robertson leading it, of American evangelists saying this is God's wrath and this is God's vengeance, this is the God of the Old Testament. What do you think of those people?
Well, I don't think very much of them. I don't believe in, well, my name is divine. I don't believe in divine intervention of this kind at all. And I think one of the things that's implicit in your question, and we've already heard it from this part of the room, is when secularists, and I agree with the discussion earlier, secularism is on the march and it's becoming increasingly aggressive. When secularists start to criticise religion, they should get their facts right before they move in. Because what I've listened to this morning is nothing less than a series of caricatures. This gentleman here, for example, is saying that religion is one of the few, if not the only human activity where critical judgment is suspended. Yes. So our faculties of theology don't exist. So the angst that people have in trying to work out faith, scepticism, etc., does not exist. This is an example of what I mean. We had the same experience during the recent papal visit of caricaturing, presenting false impressions, icons which didn't exist, mythologies, etc. I have absolutely no reason to oppose rational debate, but that rational debate should be based on empirical fact and accurate understanding.
Thank you all very much indeed. And we are heading for another rational debate. And if you've something to say about... So So you're struggling to work the television in a hotel room, or you open an unsolicited email on your laptop, and suddenly...
Sorry.
And suddenly you're confronted with some extraordinary images. Now, porn is now available everywhere at the click of a button, so it's no wonder 80% of 14 to 16-year-olds admit to having watched it online, and so has a third of the under-10s. Is porn bad for society? Johnny Ongley, you used to be... Morning. You used to be a teacher.
Yep.
Now you're a porn star?
I'm a porn performer. I'd never call myself a star, but yeah.
Right, OK. and Tilly, you've done porn in the past. You occasionally do... You do the occasional, I believe, private party, but you don't... Yeah.
I did. I spent 2 years filming porn, yeah.
Yeah. Why is it beneficial? Why is it good for society?
Well, first of all, I mean, when we're talking about pornography, we're talking about a wide genre of things. Pornography refers to literature, refers to film, imagery. And sure, within pornography, just like if I was referring to music, there would be music that contains lyrics which incite violence, homophobia, racism, the derogatory against women, all those sorts of things. Pornography, yes, there will be porn that I might view, that you might view, other people might view, that think is going to have a negative effect on some viewers. However, there is a huge array of pornography, and I believe pornography can be beneficial in a number of ways. Well, first of all, and I'm going to talk from my personal experience here, as a young man who did delve into my father's secret stash porn cupboards, and porn does pleasure me. It arouses me.
And it taught you, did it teach you anything about intimacy, love, respect?
Pornography is not there
it didn't.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Pornography is not there to teach us about that. We experience...
You produce porn, just to tell
everyone. I do,
yeah.
and I also used to be a school teacher, funnily enough.
It's an actual route, really. It's a career path, a career progression.
I want to be a school teacher.
But no, we go through our lives, and people around us, our peers, our values, things like that, and our experiences shape our views on love, on sex, all of those things. I don't believe pornography does that. I was as a young woman, I always liked pornography. I was always interested in it. The only negative...
Why? What was it about it?
Because I'm a very sexual person, and everyone is different. And there will be people in this audience, and there will be people at home who are very similar to me in that way, and then there will be people who don't view sex in that way. To them, it's something very different. But I grew up often feeling quite guilty that that I wanted to watch certain things, because again, as a woman, you're sort of led to believe this isn't right, or this is something bad for women. It doesn't show them in a good light. But I enjoyed it. I got something out of it, and I didn't find it offensive. So I, since then, have become a porn director, a porn producer, and I've worked with a lot of women in the industry as well.
Are they empowered?
Yeah, we definitely are.
Were you empowered by doing this? Or were you...
Of course we are.
Because some people say this is a form of sexual slavery.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many misconceptions about people in this industry, that we are exploited, you know, that we're forced into this, that we've had some traumatic childhood, or something terrible happened to us when we were children. And I can, like, quite honestly say that my childhood was fabulous. You know, I grew up...
Idyllic.
Yeah, my mother loved me. You know, I didn't have anything, like, traumatic happen to me. I done it because I wanted to be looked at. You know, why do women wear makeup? Do we do it for women, or do we do it so men will look at us?
And I would argue that
in
mainstream media, we see far more damaging images of women. If you now, there's such a wide
Far more damaging images of women than appear in porn?
Yeah, definitely. Because if you now go to porn, there's such a wide array of things. You can have anything you want. If you want to watch, you know, a larger lady having sex, if you want, you want to watch an older lady having sex, you can watch this. These are not the stereotypes of you know, what appears to be beautiful as well. So surely, if we're now saying,
why should we be watching it?
Why should we be watching it?
You asked me
it's
earlier
entertainment.
about an educational value. I believe there is an educational value to pornography. I have to say, when I was at school, sex education for me was in science and being shown a drawn diagram of the genitals. Now, watching pornography was the first time I'd ever seen a vagina, to be honest with you. It taught me about different ways of pleasuring the opposite sex, and whether I believe it's important to know how to pleasure your partner, whether you're in a long-term relationship.
Catherine, but there are other people to talk on this. You would not be surprised that I tell you that. Catherine Harper, Scottish Women Against Pornography. Can we kind of know where you're coming from there? Do you believe... It is, I mean, so many issues here, but do you believe it is in any sense, as Johnny argues, educational?
It is educational, he's right, like any other medium, the media, but what it's teaching is very, very negative and damaging, and that's the problem.
Why? Why do you think it's negative and damaging?
But if you look at me...
I'd like to hear an explanation of why.
OK, Adam, you say it's objectifying women's bodies.
Hang on, but
let me just finish.
We like to be objectified.
Well, Catherine hasn't finished her point. We just picked up what you said, objectifying women's bodies, which I want to introduce into our debate. But please do finish your point.
Pornography is taking the place of good, healthy sex education for young people, particularly young men. What young men are learning in pornography about sex is about power and domination. It's not teaching about a healthy sexual lifestyle. We're talking about a massive multi-billion-dollar industry that is predicated on exploitation. It preys on the vulnerable and the weakest in society, and it is profit-driven.
Have you ever spent any time on a porn set? Have you ever worked with someone like me who makes
I suspect not. How do you think, Coley? How do you think, Coley?
I mean, a few years ago, I have very, for obvious reasons, I'm going to say I've never watched porn. But I had similar feelings as you about the objectification of women and about the denigration of women and the subjugation of women. But when I delved a little further and spoke to people, practitioners, it actually seemed to be feminism in operation, because the stars of pornography are the women. The men, well, I was going to say the men can come and go, you know what I mean? But the women, it's all about the women, and the men are secondary. There are more...
What about the impact on those who watch it and what they think about women?
This is the really interesting thing. As adults, I don't think anyone can object. I mean, Johnny seems like a lovely bloke, and if adults use pornography within the realms of a relationship or not in a relationship, that's fine. Where we have a truly worrying trend in society, a time bomb ticking, is the uptake of porn by particularly young men in their teenage years, whose images, they're still learning and growing, and their images about women are developing.
Forms their opinion of what women are like.
Those, I mean, with all due respect, there is a type of pornography that aren't real women. I mean, very little of them is real, and even the real bits aren't real.
To say that, okay, we can say that, okay, and yeah, I do, to a point, agree, all right, that young boys are getting this stereotype of a woman that does, like, all these mad, nasty things that they can't do on porn. But if you think about it, you've got to really look at, like, nurture over nature and environmental issues as well. I mean, why are their parents, why don't they have password protection on their computers? Why is there not a PIN code on the television channel?
But that's a by the by. The reality is, and it has always been there, but it was... the reason I've never bought a pornographic magazine in my life isn't, heaven forfend, I didn't want to look at one. I'm a man, I wanted to. I was feared. Do you know what I mean? And plus it was quite short, and they always... It seems ironic. They say it affects your eyesight, then they put it on the top shelf. I never had the guts to go and buy it. The thing is, it's so easy on the internet. You know what I mean? And we need to...
Giselle,
sorry.
Catherine says we're missing the main points. What are the main points, Catherine?
Where is your empathy? Where is your care for the women and children involved in this industry that are the cash
What's happening to us?
I'm a woman involved in this industry.
Well, hang on, wait, Giselle, let's see what Catherine has to say about this.
Pornography, may I finish, please? May I finish?
Well, you described it as sexual slavery, didn't you?
It is. In fact, we've got more slaves now than ever before in history.
Let her finish.
Women and children are trafficked from countries where there's poverty.
Into prostitution.
I'll come to... Wait, let's let Catherine finish, and then I will come to you.
The cash crop are women and children. The porn industry depends on women and children. It is predicated on exploitation, so we're missing the point here. We are not considering that these people, the women and some men and children, and there isn't a dividing line between adults and child pornography.
I have never seen a minority porno.
Well, I have.
Well, not in the UK.
I have.
Are you talking... I think there are two different things here.
My points are that this is based on evidence.
I think it's important to say that abusive images of children are one thing. Wait a minute, please. What we're talking about is the legitimate, legal
Have you
business
seen the
of-
magazine Barely Legal?
No, I haven't.
It's
And they are all over 18
of underage children.
No, they're not underage.
Right. Okay, Giselle, you're all, wait a minute, you're all talking at once, we can't hear anyone, so what we do, we'll come to the bishop. If in doubt, go to the bishop. That's what I always say. In life, much as on this programme, is this a moral business?
I'm not interested in living in a puritanical, moralistic, repressive society. That's where I start. Well, I think that's a sad and impoverished place. So this is an area of human freedom. The trouble is, it covers a very wide spectrum. And I know that people are talking about regulation and all that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, as you hit on it by accident, or the hotel room television thing, you know, it's a very, very wide spectrum, and control is very, very difficult. I think what bothers me about it, at the end of the day, and I'm quite happy that people should explore it and enjoy it if that's what they want to do.
Why are you happy about that?
Well, because I think it's an area of human freedom, and I don't like the puritanical, repressive thing. But what I do want to say, Nikki, is I think that there is a danger that it coarsens society, that there are lots of influences around which actually do, as it were, blunt the openness and the edges of people's personality, and that, I think, is not good for society. And I would put porn, I think, in danger of being in that area. It's a personal choice. If we're in the area where it's not exploitative, and particularly where it's not abusive of children or women...
Well, that's different. That's not pornography. Those are abusive images of children. Yeah.
Sure. I still think it risks being a coarsening element.
Johnny, I know you're desperate to come back, and Ruth, I'll come to you in a second. But Johnny, go on.
Well, first of all, just to respond to you, I mean, of course, in any industry, there are bad apples in there. It's apples, right? You know, I've worked in all sorts of industries. I've been a teacher, I've worked in banking, I've worked in the travel industry. There's exploitation in all those industries. There are bad people, there's corruption, absolutely. But
human beings.
Sorry?
The product here in this industry is human beings.
Well,
the
human beings work in all
goes
industries,
beyond,
excuse me.
And there are bad
beyond
people in all
the image. It has a dynamic that...
No, we're listening to Johnny.
However, all the porn that I've ever been involved with, everyone's been utterly respected, we've been utterly professional when we've been on set. If the woman is ever feeling uncomfortable, we take a break, we have a pause, she makes herself comfortable again. I've never witnessed, and I'm not a woman, so I cannot speak from a woman's perspective here, but I've never witnessed that. Also, when you're talking about, I believe in this country, we do have a problem.
What about the impact on the people watching? That's what we're trying to...
That's what I'm saying. In this country, we do have a problem because our young people are watching the same pornography as as everybody else around the world, right? But the problem is, in this country, we have a very immature attitude towards sex. So we're not dealing with it, and we're not dealing with the issue from a young enough age at a mature enough level. I have Dutch friends, for instance, and this is a bit extreme, but she said when she was younger, if her parents were having sex in the bedroom, she could just go in and grab something from the cupboard and just walk out again. It was never an issue.
Adam, you don't like that at all, do you?
If you talk to young Dutch people...
Adam's about to explode.
I'm about to explode.
Adam is about to explode.
In the 21st century...
the image of your parents.
21st century, we have a woman saying, I like being objectified. I can't believe that after all... The struggles...
say she likes being objectified. She likes having sex.
No, let me finish. I think... You said you liked being objectified. You said that.
No, I didn't say it. I said I like to be looked at.
You didn't say that.
Why do we wear makeup? Because we like people to look at us.
The greatest disservice to women is that we have convinced women that being used as... One second.
To be in that position.
1 second.
Everybody's in at the same time, you know, which is very often...
The greatest disservice to women is that we have somehow convinced women that being a sexual instrument, a blow-up doll made from flesh, is somehow liberating. That this is the biggest disservice to women.
Hang on a minute. So to use your words, I'm a blow-up doll in flesh, yeah? To use your words against you, that's what I am, a blow-up doll made of flesh.
No, you're not. You're a human being, and I wouldn't ask you to do such things as pornography. That's the point.
But she's chosen to. Where's her choice to do that? Why are you questioning?
Let me answer that.
Let me answer that.
Let me answer that.
But your choice has been driven by the fact you've been watching porn.
If I may answer that.
When people are watching porn... Wait, no. Let me ask this.
disasters
when people are
and some
watching,
ones he saves.
when people
It's
are
like-
watching the porn, do they see you as a person, as a human being? Do you think?
Well, do you know what?
They don't need to,
want
Giselle.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
fantasy. It's
Your characters.
It is entertainment. I enjoy watching people have sex. That doesn't make me a bad person. If I am made to feel like a bad person, that's the problem. That's when it becomes a problem in society, when people are then seen as outsiders for enjoying this. If it's consenting adults, and this is the whole point, in the British industry, and I've worked in this industry now for 2.5 years as a producer, a lot of performers are my friends, we are regulated, we have to provide the IDs of everyone to say that they're over 18, we have to take pictures of them holding those IDs to prove that, they have to have their sexual health certificates. It is entirely regulated now as an industry. I can't speak for the entire world or every person making porn.
Alistair Robertson.
In this country, that's how it works.
Alistair Robertson works in the area of violence against women. Alistair Robertson works in the area of violence against women. Now, Alistair, please tell these people why you think what they do is dangerous.
I think it's an interesting comparison when you say that it's regulation, because banks are regulated. So, but as far as
there's a different sort of answer.
wait. As far as it doing no damage is concerned, I think we've got to be careful there. I think what we've got to see is the pornification of children in schools, where they've got mobile phones, where they're making their own porn movies, where their expectations are that because they've seen some kind of pornographic material, that's their expectation of how I'm supposed to behave in a relationship.
I want to listen to him. I want to listen to what he's got to say. Thank you. Let's listen to what he's got to say.
I think you've got to be careful with that, because if what you're doing is you're creating an expectation within children and young people and adolescents that that's how they're expected to perform, that's how they're expected to look, then I think that that's damaging. And I accept.
Alistair, does it change the way that some men think about women when they've watched this stuff?
Yes, I think it does. And I also think that there's an expectation, and I'm speaking from personal experience here, where maybe there's something not normal about me, because I don't necessarily enjoy watching pornography. I don't necessarily enjoy going into supermarkets and finding that my 4-year-old can pick up a magazine that's pornographic from the bottom shelf.
Lady here, Tilly, we're over here. This lady is very keen to say something.
Yeah, my name is Becky Dwyer with the Consenting Adult.
Hello, Becky.
Consenting Network.
Adult.
Yeah.
That you emphasize.
So part of the problem here that I'm seeing is that there's a lot of emphasis on the children. What are these children getting hold of these things? But the thing is, if we treat everything as being, well, what happens if a child gets hold of it? What happens if a child holds this steak knife? My God, the child can't hold the steak knife, he'll cut himself.
Yeah.
So if we treat all pornography as if it's in danger of being shown to children, we end up treating all adults as children as well. Are we not adults capable of running our own lives?
Okay, look, and what about the attitudes to women, though?
That's the problem with the comparison she's just made between steak knives and porn.
Yeah.
Because, excuse me.
We don't know. Johnny, we don't know what he said yet.
Please, could you give me a chance to speak? Because, seriously speaking, we've all been children before, and you really cannot make a comparison between a steak knife and what imagery brings through porn. You had to go to your dad's stuff to steal stuff. To watch in porn, you don't go stealing steak knives. They've got influences. Excuse me.
Giselle, very quickly.
What upset me as a child and what disturbed me as a child was seeing violent horror films. Not seeing people having consensual sex.
Ruth Gledhill.
What we have seen...
It's a vast money-making business, whether it be for the gratification of those who watch it or the financial gratification of people like Richard Desmond who run the business is another question for another day. But are you uncomfortable with the porn industry, or is it just one of those freedom of choice things? We live and let live, and it's adults making an informed decision.
I certainly accept there is a safety valve argument. I wouldn't deny that. But I think what we've seen here in front of our eyes is the demeaning effect that pornography has on civilised discourse. One of the things that worries me most is the thousands, hundreds of thousands of women in their homes who want to make love, and I use those phrases advisedly, make love with their husbands, and we haven't heard much of love here, have we,
Yes,
today?
right,
Who want to make love with their husbands with the lights on, but then, because they're living up to an impossible ideal and they're embarrassed to have the light on, so they do it in the dark because they know that what their husbands have been watching doesn't match up to what they can offer. And I think that it's having a terrible effect upon intimacy in homes up and down the country, and we don't hear this publicly.
I think mainstream fashion magazines have more of an impact on women's bodies.
Exactly.
We're going to give you... wait, everyone. We're going to give you the very last word in this debate, Catherine. And we're all going to listen to see what she's going to say. But if you want to contribute to our next debate, you are very welcome to do so. Catherine.
Talking about evidence, it's extremely important you brought up the safety valve thing, because this is one of the biggest myths in pornography, that the use of pornography reduces sexual crimes and sex offenders from committing crimes. In fact, the absolute opposite is true. That, in fact, I have the evidence. The evidence is this. May I finish?
Please let her finish. Please let her finish. Please let her finish.
Ray Wire, who has worked with sex offenders, the late Ray Wire, who I know has worked with sex offenders since the 70s, and his research is very, very clear that the use of pornography actually fuels sex offenders and increases in the 2 weeks prior to committing a sexual offence. So it is the very opposite of a safety valve. It is actually validating and legitimising those...
Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you for your contributions on the way through. A recent Ministry of Justice report in Scotland confirmed what you say, but there have been other reports in other parts of the world that say the opposite. So don't be afraid to log on. Contact us if you've got something to